Welcome to the Spirit of Mayberry, brought to you by Research Chief Spirit Walker from an undisclosed location deep within the bowels of the Andy Griffith Show Research Laboratory.
Hey, it's that time of year again, and if you're wondering what to get the Andy Griffith Show lover in your family for Christmas, for the new year, you can't go wrong with MayberryBooks.com. You go over there, you can pick up some of Randy Turner's books on Mayberry, some beautiful books over there. His latest book is a travel guide to Mount Airy, North Carolina. You don't want to miss that. You can pick up my book there. You can pick up his flip calendars, which tell you something every day of the year next year about the Andy Griffith Show. You can even, hey, here's an idea. Go and subscribe your Andy Griffith Show lover to the Ambassadors Club. They get a beautiful certificate, and they once every quarter they get a beautiful magazine that gives them articles and updates on what's going on with cast members and with and different stories about the inside uh, workings of the Andy Griffith Show. It's great. You can also go over to weaversdepartmentstore.com. Go over to Weavers. He also has books. Here's Ron and Clint Howard's latest book, The Boys. He has that book over there. Weavers has all kinds of books. Karen Knotts has a book on there. But they also have wall calendars. They also have t-shirts and hats and all kinds of things. You can get a model of the squad car. There's all kinds of things at weaversdepartmentstore.com. You all kinds of stocking stuffers over there at Weavers. So you go over there, patronize these two businesses, MayberryBooks.com and weaversdepartmentstore.com. That's the place to get gifts about the Andy Griffith Show. I thank you. Today is Monday, November 28th, 2022. And on this day, Monday, November 28th, 1960, the 8th episode of the Andy Griffith Show aired, and it was called OPIE'S Charity. In that episode, Andy tried to teach Opie the meaning of charity, the meaning of giving to those less fortunate than ourselves. And I think that's an appropriate lesson to discuss on this beautiful Thanksgiving season when we're thankful for what we have and we try to supply those who are less fortunate than ourselves. It's a good lesson to pass on to your children. It's a lesson I'm sure your parents passed on to you. But I thought I'd kind of expand that idea and named my episode Opie's Parenting, because I wanted to go over some of the life lessons that Andy taught Opie on the show. Now, to do that, what I did was I went on my Esquire Club, and if you're not a member of the Andy Griffith Show Esquire Club, go to facebook.com/groups/tags, T-A-G-S, Esquire Club. That's Tags Esquire Club. And join the Esquire Club. It'll be my group where I give different information on Facebook. So what I did was I went on there a couple of weeks ago and I posted a post. It's redundant, isn't it? Asking people to give me life lessons that Andy taught Opie on the show, just to get ideas for this show. Got a very beautiful comment from actually one of Opie's friends on the show. He played Howie Pruitt. His name is Dennis Rush, and I got a very nice comment from him about some of the things that Andy passed on to Opie and the other kids on the show. But I thought I'd take some of their ideas and expand on them just a little bit and give you 5. There were many, many more. I could go on for hours, but I wanted to keep this a little shorter. I'll do other episodes on other things that lessons that were taught on the Andy Griffith Show, but I thought I'd stick with just 5 for this episode of lessons that Andy taught Opie. And I want to start with the first lesson that Andy tried to teach Opie was, and by the way, let me just throw this in here. One of the reasons I love the Andy Griffith Show, and I think a lot of people love the Andy Griffith Show, is because it was realistic. That is, the characters evolved, they grew, they matured, Andy was not the same Andy in season 1 he was in season 2 or season 3 and then season 4. He continued to grow as a human being, as all of us should. If you're the same as you were last year, you're not growing. You need to grow. We all need to grow and mature and get better at what we do and better at being a human being. And that's what the whole show was about. It was about relationships and growing. And so some of the lessons that Andy tried to teach Opie, he actually ended up learning himself. And don't we do that? That's why the Andy Griffith Show stands apart from other sitcoms to me, because Andy grew and he wasn't afraid to learn from Opie as much as he tried to teach Opie. And so keep that in mind as we go through this. The first thing I want to talk about is one of the life lessons that Andy taught Opie in the 14th episode of season 1, The Horse Trader. Now, in that episode, Andy was trying to sell a cannon, and he got a little carried away in describing the cannon. There was a man named Ralph Mason who was interested in buying a cannon because he was a junk dealer, if you will. He bought used items, as we all do, and resold them. And he was an antiques dealer, I guess is the proper term. He wanted to buy the cannon, and Andy kind of insinuated, he didn't come right out and tell him, but he insinuated that the cannon had been a cannon that Teddy Roosevelt pulled up San Juan Hill with his Rough Riders. And of course, Ralph Mason called him on immediately saying, I thought Teddy Roosevelt headed up a cavalry unit. And that's true. Teddy Roosevelt did. And Andy said, well, he did charge up San Juan Hill on horseback, but pulling this cannon behind him. Barney called him on it, and eventually Opie got the same idea. Now, before that happened, Opie was going to trade some licorice seeds that he got from Tommy Farrell, and he was going to trade the licorice seeds to Jerry, his friend Jerry, for some roller skates. And Andy told him that was unethical. And he said, now remember the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And Opie said, well, Tommy did it unto me and I'm doing it unto Jerry. That's typical, not just kid typical. Sometimes we feel like that as adults, don't we? And Andy tried to tell him that's not ethical. Now you go home and you do right. And then Andy turned around and did this with the cannon. And Opie has a great soliloquy, by the way, in that episode. Opie does the first soliloquy on the show, which he had been taught back in episode 9, A Feud is a Feud, what a soliloquy was, where you kind of look off and talk to yourself. And it's what Andy told him when he was telling him the story of Romeo and Juliet. And so Opie did. He did a soliloquy where he looked at the camera and said, if honesty is the best policy, why am I out a cap pistol? He had to learn that lesson to deal fairly. And so Andy had to learn that lesson, and they both came out and dealt ethically. I can't help but think of that episode when I see the 10th episode of season 2, which is the Clubmen, where the Esquire Club comes into effect. And Andy and Barney were going to join the Esquire Club, and then they would accept Andy but not Barney. And so Andy decided not to join. But they did decide to join another club called the Tomahawks, and that was Opie's club. And so Opie came in to swear them in, and the only thing we hear of the oath is, I swear to be fair and square at all times. That was Opie's first rule of his club. So he learned that lesson back in episode 14, carried it over into the Tomahawks. He would be reminded of that lesson, and so would Andy, again in season 5, in the 16th episode, which was called Barney Fife Realtor. Now, in that one, Barney's trying to sell a house, and he's trying to sell Andy's house, because Andy says he would sell his house if he could get the Williams house. And so Barney's trying to do that. In the meantime, Opie's trying to sell his bicycle to Howie Williams. I mentioned Howie Pruitt. It was the same character. In fact, Dennis Rush told me when they got the script, he and his mother were sitting on the couch, And his mother, he was reading the script and he said, "Mom, they changed my last name." And his mother said, "Shh, just be thankful you have a job." Isn't that good advice? That's good parenting advice too. So Howie Williams was going to buy Opie's bike, but Opie didn't quite tell him everything that was wrong with the bike, and so Andy jumped in and told him, "Doesn't the chain slip? Doesn't this happen?" And so um, Howie ended up not buying the bike. Well, when Andy went to sell his house to two prospective buyers, played by the way by Dabbs Greer and Amzie Strickland, Barney was telling him what a great house it was, as all realtors will do, and Andy was going along with it, trying to sell his house. But Opie pointed out the crack in the ceiling and the fact that the faucets made a noise if you didn't turn them on all the way, and he kind of ruined the deal. And Andy felt like Opie was doing it just because he ruined the deal on Opie's bike, but Opie said, "No, Paul, you told me. You mean that rule only applies to kids? It doesn't apply to adults too?" Andy had no answer for that, and neither do we. The next one I want to talk about is self-control, how to handle confrontation. This is another lesson that Andy taught Opie in 2 episodes. Well, let's just say that in one episode he got the initial lesson, and then he expanded on it in the second one. The first episode was in season 2. It was the very first episode. It was called Opie and the Bully. In that episode, Sheldon, who was a kid in school that was a bully, was bullying Opie out of lunch money, and so Opie was trying not to give the kid the money, but he didn't want to take the knuckle sandwich the kid promised him if he didn't. Now, this is bullying, plain and simple. Today, there's a lot of problems with bullying in our schools, but no different than it ever was. There were bullies in my school. There were bullies in Opie's school. Andy taught him how to handle that confrontation. He told him a story about Hody Snitch who bullied him, and it was a fictional story, but it was a proverb. A proverb is a story that may or may not be true, partially true sometimes, but embellished all the time. But it teaches a moral lesson. And so that's what Andy did. He made up a parable, if you will, about Hody Snitch stealing his fishing hole and how he went ahead and took the knuckle sandwich. And when he was hit, he just laughed and sailed into him like a windmill in a tornado. And so Opie steeled himself as a little 6-year-old kid and went in there and took his knuckle sandwich by refusing to give Sheldon his nickel that he was demanded every day. And he took the knuckle sandwich, and he survived and sailed into him like a windmill in a tornado. Now, some people don't think that's advisable. Let me tell you something. I have taken a knuckle sandwich. I remember in junior high school in Austin, Texas, I remember there was this little bitty kid who thought he was a big kid, and he had a friend that was a big kid, but his friend was very mild and docile. But this little kid just bossed him around, and he was his muscle. And so the little kid one day was coming down the hallway after school. I was walking down the hallway. They were coming toward me, and the little kid was riding on top of the shoulders of the big kid. And I saw him rear his fist back. I've been doing martial arts all my life, since I was 6 years old. I was walking, so I'm very disciplined. I saw the punch coming, and I saw where he was aiming it, and I took the punch. He hit me in the jaw, he knocked my head to the side, and I kept walking like nothing ever happened, like it never even fazed me. Do you know that little kid never ever picked on me again? He picked on everybody else, but he never picked on me again. Why? Because I took his best shot and didn't even acknowledge it. If I could get out of a confrontation by taking one shot, I win. Now, let's fast forward to season 3, episode 14, One Punch Opie. The title says Opie's going to take a punch again. Opie doesn't, though. He has learned. He has progressed to the next level. of handling confrontations. And he realizes that if he has no fear, it unnerves the confrontation, the person that initiated the confrontation, and Opie backed him down. And he didn't even have to take the one punch. And he solved the problem by not running away from it. You never solve a problem by running away from it. Now, as a martial arts instructor, I teach my students the 4 planes of ethics. And the 4 planes of ethics are these: 1 being the lowest plane, 4 being the one you want to reach. The lowest plane is bully, provoking someone into a fight. That is the lowest plane. That plane should never be reached. The second plane is provoking someone to attack you. In other words, making somebody mad enough to attack you so that you can say it wasn't your fault. So you're trying to shift the blame to them, but you poke at them enough verbally until they fight back. All right, that's level 2, and that's one we want to stay away from as well. Level 3 is the hardest one to stay off of, and that's what I call overkill. That is, somebody unprovoked attacks you, and you overcompensate for the attack. Someone pushes you, walk away. They haven't done anything. Somebody calls you a name, laugh and walk away. Don't get pushed and hit somebody. That's overkill. You're going above and beyond the insult that was done to you. Just walk away. It is a brave man who walks away, not a coward. Walk away. And the 4th level is what I call neutralization, neutralizing the situation. So that if somebody hits me and they continue to attack me, I want to end the confrontation as fast as possible by just neutralizing the situation. Sometimes that might be physical. Sometimes it doesn't have to be physical. I neutralize the situation by taking a punch and not even flinching. That's neutralization. That's the 4th plane of ethics that I teach martial arts students. And Opie learned that 4th plane of that 4th plane of ethics. I'll be able to talk. That punch was a little bit harder than I thought. The 3rd thing I want to talk about is perseverance. Perseverance in sportsmanship is what Opie learned in A Medal for Opie in season 2, episode 19. When Opie didn't win the race, he got mad. He was a bad sport, as we would call it, and he blamed his friends. They took my medal. They did this. They did that. You have to take responsibility for your actions yourself. And you have to learn, as Andy tried to tell him, it's easy to be a good loser, but it's hard to be a good winner. Or it's easy to be a good winner, hard to be a good loser. Got that backwards. Because when you lose, you feel bad and you start placing blame. And he said what you need to do is congratulate your friends that won and go back and try to win it again next year. That's perseverance. That's not giving up, because you're going to lose. Andy told him, you're going to lose a lot in your life. There's a lot more losing coming up. Now Opie said he said you should be proud of yourself for trying. And Opie said, you don't get a medal for trying. Well, we have ruined our society by giving out trophies just for trying. A kid's got a closet full of participation trophies and he think he did something. We can't be teaching our children that. We have to teach them to keep striving to better themselves, to get better and better and better and better, not settle for just trying, but actually getting better each time. Just keep going back and keep pushing forward. One of my favorite lessons in life I learned from Rocky Balboa. He said, it's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's exactly right. That's perseverance. And Opie learned to just keep trying and don't quit and don't place blame on somebody else. Another good lesson that Opie learned was personal responsibility, having an indomitable spirit. Nothing's going to get me down. I make mistakes, I come back. I make mistakes, I come back. Taking responsibility. Now, I think the first kind of little part of this lesson was in season 3 in episode 21, Opie and the Spoiled Kid. I think that was where he learned that Arnold Winkler always got what he wanted by throwing a fit. So he tried it with Andy, and I love the scene where Andy's at his desk and Opie is trying to get him to give him his allowance without him having to work for his allowance. And so he holds his breath because Arnold coached him on how to get his way. So he's holding his breath, and Andy looks up and says, "What are you doing?" And Opie says, "I'm holding my breath." Andy says, "Oh, good lung exercise." Now, Andy knew what Opie was doing this whole time. He was having fun with it. So Opie begins to to pretend cry. Andy says, "What are you doing now?" And he says, "I'm crying and I can't stop." Andy's response was, "That's a shame." And he goes back to doing what he's doing. It was hilarious, but it was perfect parenting. He didn't acknowledge it. He was not going to give Opie his way just because Opie wanted it. You have to control the kids. You have to teach them. You can't have what you want when you want it all the time. And then Opie throws a fit and gets on the ground, and he's rolling around and stomping his feet and slapping his hands on the floor. And Andy says, "What are you doing now?" And he says, I'm having a tantrum." And Andy says, "Well, don't get your clothes all dirty." And Opie learns you can't have everything you want when you want it. You have to take responsibility. If you want something, you work for it. And that's what Andy taught Opie in season 3. But in season 4, the very first episode of season 4 was Opie the Birdman. It is a fan favorite. It is a fantastically written story and acted, where Opie accidentally kills a mother bird with a slingshot. And then instead of punishing him, well, Andy does punish him. He opens his window and makes him listen to those baby birds crying for their mother that's never going to come back. So Opie says, "I'm sorry," and Andy says, "Sorry doesn't fix everything. It's not a magic word." And so Opie takes it upon himself to raise the baby birds, Wink and Blink and Nod, from the old nursery rhyme. And so he raises the birds. He takes responsibility. He tells his father that since their mother bird's not coming back, and he's the reason the mother bird's not coming back, he's going to take the responsibility and raise the baby birds on his own. And he does an excellent job. That's taking responsibility. He also does another version of taking responsibility and not shoving the blame to somebody else. In season 8, in episode 19, Opie's drugstore job. Opie gets a job in a drugstore for Mr. Dokes, and uh, I can't remember the man's name. You'll have to forgive me. But anyway, he gets a job in the drugstore, and he accidentally breaks a bottle of very expensive perfume, and he comes out of his own pocket and replaces it without the owner of the store knowing it. However, what he didn't know was that wasn't the real perfume. That was just a bottle of colored water on display. And then the last one that I want to talk about is he learned the importance of relationships, of being kind to people, family, friends, strangers, being kind to people. He learned the importance of relationships. And he learned that, first of all, right at the very opening of the season 1, The New Housekeeper, when he learned that just because somebody can't do certain things, Aunt Bee couldn't fish and she couldn't play baseball, she couldn't hunt frogs, she couldn't do all the things that Rose did with him, but she had a worth. And no matter who you meet, they have a worth. They may not be able to do some of the things that you do, or some of the things that other of your friends do well. It doesn't, everyone has a worth. And Opie realized that family was important. And the Andy Griffith Show was all about relationships. But he learned that Aunt Bee was very valuable and that he should love her just as much as he did Rose. He learned again a thing about friendship and how to never rat on a friend. In Runaway Kid, which was the 6th episode of season 1, he learned that you don't rat out a friend. You keep a confidence. You keep control of that relationship with other people by holding that confidence very dear to your heart. He also learned that jealousy can break apart a friendship if you'll let it. So you cannot look at situations with a jealous eye, with the old green eye, as they say. Andy and Opie's pal in season 4, episode 14. Um, Opie first met Trey Bowden, and Trey got along good with Andy. And Opie was afraid that Trey was going to usurp his position as Andy's son. And many times in the show, Andy tells Opie, "You're my son. I love you unconditionally. You're my son. Nobody's going to come in between us. Not Peggy McMillan, not Trey Bowden. No one can take your place." And so Opie learned that lesson. I was referring to Peggy McMillan because of Opie's rival episode, also in season 4. Peggy McMillan, season 3. Peggy McMillan, Opie thought Peggy was coming in between him and Andy. In season 6, Opie's job, that was where Mr. Dokes hired him to work in a grocery store. Opie was competing with another kid who was competing simply because his parents needed money and he wanted to help his parents pay the bills. And when Opie got the job over that kid, Opie found out that that kid really needed the money. Opie just wanted it to buy a new bike. Well, this kid needed it for his family, and Opie had compassion on somebody he had never met and gave up the job so that kid could have the job. He learned about relationships. Now, I mentioned that I've taught martial arts for years and years and years. Taekwondo is my primary art, even though it's not my only art. And there are 5 tenets of Taekwondo that we say before every class. Courtesy, that is relationships with other people, being courteous. The next one is integrity. Guess what? That's honesty. That's what Opie learned from Andy. Perseverance, that's where he learned, in a medal for Opie, he learned to persevere, to keep on keeping on. Self-control, that's learning to take care of confrontations. And the last one being Indomitable Spirit. In other words, never giving up on anything and thinking you're going to get what you want for nothing. That's personal responsibility. Continuing, though 1,000 come against me, I will not give up. Though there are many obstacles in my way, I will work through it. Those are the 5 lessons that I wanted to concentrate on for this episode. The Andy Griffith Show is a great place to study parenting. They don't always get it right, but neither do you. Neither do I. But if we're not better today than we were a year ago, we're not growing. Watch Andy grow through the show, and you continue to grow through the show. I'll leave you with this. When I was 20 years old, I thought I knew everything. I could do everything. I had a lot of accomplishments under my belt in my 20s, a lot. And I thought I was the wisest person until I hit my 30s. And somewhere in my 30s, I realized that me in my 20s was a total idiot. But that's okay. I got it together now. Now I'm wise. Now I'm smart. And then I got into my 40s and I realized that me in my 30s was an absolute idiot. But I got it together now. But in my 30s, I was an idiot. And then I hit my 50s. What I'm trying to tell you is, You and me may not be as smart as we think we are right now. Give it 10 years. You might change your mind. Hey, do me a favor, like and subscribe to this channel. I will appreciate that. And I tell you what, I love doing these videos. I love talking about the Andy Griffith Show. There is so much to learn, so much to see in the Andy Griffith Show. Until next time, thanks for being here. I thank you.